panelists today. I am Anchita. I know some of you already know me, and I am a career coach at Mindler. I'm here to facilitate this webinar along with my esteemed panelists. First up, we have Miss Noopur Tiwari, who's a designer by qualification with an expertise in TV production, non-fiction, experimental films. She is a film and video communication designer who has worked with niche television channels like National Geographical Channel and also produced various health lifestyle shows as a part of the features of CNN IBN. She's a graduate from the National Institute of Design and has over 15 years of work experience. After upgrading her skill set at Chicago, she moved to her hometown Bhopal and got associated as a faculty and jury member at the National Institute of Fashion Technology, Bhopal. She's currently working as the associate professor and heading Jagran School of Visual Arts and Design and her teaching graduate and undergraduate students. We welcome you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, we have Dr. Aditya Ghosh, who's an associate professor and undergraduate program coordinator for community planning and development. Dr. Aditya has been juggling with geography and journalism for 18 years now, with academic stints at Heidelberg, Lufthansa, Swex, and Mumbai, Calcutta Universities, 2010, and now as well with professional engagements with Encyclopedia Britannica, The Guardian, Hindustan Times, Times of India. In the previous 10 years, Aditya has been passionate about challenging his own limits. His disciplinary expertise encompasses human geography, political ecology, and many more. At the moment, he himself can generally be found on cozy couch listening to Hindustani classical music. I really wanted to add that. That was really something that I was looking at. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have Professor. 1 second, I'll just take a minute. Can you please help me with your name again?
Sure, it's I. The C is silent.
Like
okay.
Okay, all right. So I'd rather call you Professor Malpani. Will that be okay?
Sure, Professor Malpani works too.
Great. Professor Malpani is Associate Professor and Deputy Director and Undergraduate Program Coordinator for Interior Architecture and Design. She has completed her degree in B Architecture from TVB School of Habitat Studies. And she's frequently likes to adopt nom de plume Daikin, which basically means puns are one of her many loves. Something that I really...
Actually, sorry, Anchita, it's pronounced design.
Right, sir. Okay, perfect. Right. Thank you so much for correcting me. Okay. Before getting into a dual master's degree with master's in architecture degree from the School of Design, Architecture, Art and Planning at the University of Cincinnati, she was awarded the Best Research and the Best Thesis Award from both the programs, respectively, for her thesis, which investigated in underpinnings of modernist architectural representations, question of narratives in translation, and the creation of masculine subjectivities. She continues to explore a lot of these domains and her teaching engagements. As a practicing architect, she has had a wide field of experience, both nationally and internationally, working on a range of projects from airports to schools to hotels, and even designing one-room residences in her current form, which she also serves as the Deputy Director for the Jindal Center of Social Design. Thank you so much for joining in. We're very happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right. So let's go ahead and open the floor and let's discuss about something very, very simple and basic that we're going to talk about today. And the topic is about the rethinking careers in design. And I would just open the floor for all the panelists to help us understand what are these elements that we are, again, discussing about rethinking careers in design. Why are we doing that? I would just want to open this. What is the conventional careers of design? One. Second, and why are we going ahead and rethinking about this? So, Ms. Noopur, over to you.
So conventionally, design was divided into majorly two types of designs. So they had visual communications, and then you had industrial design. So for design, the fundamental principle is problem solving. And it is to reframe, and now we're looking at reframing it to more strategic form during COVID, because now it's very important to essentially safeguard lives and look for innovative solutions to challenges that everybody is facing. So from systems thinking, we're looking at a system thinking approach rather than just a design thinking approach. So that is one of the transitions which has happened. This is also done through a very systematic approach in design, which is cross-functional design in digital transformation, which is currently deployed everywhere. So the cross-functional interdisciplinary team is then able to work across teams to develop a strategic transformation strategy. That could be something which, almost it's running all over in industries globally. So that is one thing which is happening within design space, according to me.
Perfect. That actually makes sense. Dr. Aditya, let's hear it from you.
Okay. See, I would say that the word design, the mere word design has actually expanded, you know, tremendously over the past year and a half, or during this COVID period, because essentially everything is designed now. Now, the way we allocate our resources is a design. The way we design spaces, of course, is design. But even the way we, let's say, deal with migrant laborers, for example, is design. The way we channelize our resources within a community is design. So essentially, we are looking at almost virtually an exponential expansion of the word design, or the concept of design itself. Not only, let's say, it's any way any more restricted to the concepts of visual or the concepts of system thinking, as Ms. Tiwari rightly pointed out, that we need a systems thinking. So when we are doing that systems thinking, we are actually expanding the word and the understanding and the concept of design itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do we evolve spaces where communities can live in peace and harmony? That's design. So essentially, it could also be a tool for conflict resolution, for example. I mean, we would not think about that maybe a few years ago, or so which is where I think this becomes really, really important to understand, that it is not restricted in what we used to understand. And I mean, I can be brutally honest with myself. When I was a young kid, I would just draw something on the paper and think that, wow, what a design. So from that to what we are today has actually expanded it enormously. And that's where I think we need to all align our thinkings, all realign our thinking, to better understand what is the scope of design. We academics, we are all grappling with the question itself, ourselves, that where we go from here. I mean, it's kind of a never ending expanse. So as we are also experimenting with the idea of expanding this whole concept of design, at the same time, we are also seeing how it can be expanded every day. It's kind of expanding with things like social media, our communication designs, our social networks have become a function of design. So I think all this put together, I think it's really important for us to now not just think what it used to be, or what challenge our own selves in a sense. That I think is what I would emphasize on here.
Perfect. I hear two, three very relevant points here. You've talked about how basic and how elementary design has always been, and how we have always found ourselves designing something with the other, whether it is just our own profiles, our resumes, to buildings, to hospitals, the way we look at anything and everything, right from products, right? You've also mentioned and you've touched upon the role of technology now coming into the design element, and how, due to that, there has been a rapid change across the globe with respect to design, right? So these will be points that I will coming back to. Let's hear from Professor Malpani first.
Thanks, Anchita. So, firstly, straight off the bat, let me say I am in complete agreement with Ms. Tiwari and Dr. Ghosh. Right? design is not a mysterious object out there that people think that it is, right? And part of that problem has been us designers. We have kind of made design seem like this rather strange, mysterious thing, which only a few people who are deemed creative are capable of. I want to, right at the beginning, say, no, that's not true, right? But let me now back a little bit from the question, say, okay, when we think of any career and it's, let's say, a relationship to an education that you pursue, right? Most of us have, and especially in the subcontinent, this part of the world that we are occupying, very often we've been fed this idea that you study this and you become that. You go to engineering school, you're an engineer. You go to architecture school, you're an architect. You go to design school, interior design, which I'm a coordinator for, and you're an interior designer. What this kind of misses out on is that no professional is actually just a single facet. Right? You're constantly trying to work with a lot of people. You're constantly in this zone of collaborative thinking and doing. There is no job that you're taking on that's just one solo person facilitating the whole thing, right? And whatever profession you might be in, but design in particular. So I think when we start thinking of careers in design, we have to realize that, for example, let's take interior design. Studying interior design while you can become an interior designer actually is a way of becoming far many more things, as far as we at every level take into the account this idea of collaboration and this idea of interdisciplinarity, which is a very important idea to design.
Perfect. I think that makes complete sense. You've kind of revamped the entire thing and told us the basic element of what we're trying to look at. And yes, this is a very valid and important concern also that has come up, that, we've always looked at careers and design related to just great drawing skills and artistic skills. And we've ignored so many soft skills, which are extremely important, which is rightly mentioned by Professor Malpani. You have to look at teamwork. You are looking at great communication skills. You're looking at critical thinking skills. Your
Absolutely.
ability to look at and recognized small differences and similarities. I think what we've also I understand from Professor Malpani's point here is that we are now moving from a very specialist culture to a culture of generalist. And that is somewhere or the other, playing a very important role, because we have careers which are now interdisciplinary. We are looking at it in that form. And henceforth, communication skills and soft skills have been the most important aspect to look at, which brings me to our next question. That, since we've talked about the perception of design, now keeping the pandemic here, right? How has the perception of design evolved since the pandemic? Do you think pandemic has played any role in evolving that perception? Have we now somewhere or the other stepped into more digital forms? Are we now more open to this kind of interdisciplinary approach? Is there any change that you people have seen? So, Professor Malpani, let's start with you only.
Well, for one, I think it was also pointed out earlier, while we may not be calling it design, right? Let me throw in another word, which is inhabitation, which is never outside of the question of design, how we actually are in various spaces. Sorry,
Right.
am I still audible? My connection's
Yes,
a little... Okay, wonderful. So, this idea of inhabitation, there is no way this has been thrown more in our faces than over the last 1.5 years. How are we living at home? How are we suddenly realizing that one table in our house has to double up as a dining space, has to double up as a workspace, has to double up as a study space? There's so much happening around it, right? And therefore, what we need to really start thinking is also taking on this idea of space and looking at it critically. And therefore, for a lot of us who are part of, looking at the built environment, whether it's through interiors, whether it's through community, whether it's through urban, whether it's through architecture, having a far more critical understanding of space has become something of a burning issue for me and for practically most of the world in the whole field of design. Just trying to figure out how do we live. Clearly, the pandemic and with all of social distancing, all of this has changed fundamentally, even changed our own perceptions of the world around us. So I think this is actually an excellent time to start questioning many of these fundamental tenets, and everybody's been doing so.
Right. I have a small follow-up question on that.
Sure.
Can
Yeah.
can you talk about any one fundamental that you've questioned and you've thought that, okay, probably this should have not been this way, and anything that you would want to share?
Well, Anshita, I work with issues of gender, right? And we're
Right.
clearly at this point seeing a lot of, I mean, while we don't even really have actual figures in terms of what the proportions or what the stats might show us, this has been a time where domestic abuse has gone up at homes across the globe, across this country, right? Why has this happened? Is this merely because there are abusive people on the planet? No, it's a little bit more complex than that, surely, right? The fact that we are at home, and our homes are also negotiated territories. Our homes are, thanks to this small little, I try to be ironic thing called modernity, we've all gotten used to this idea that we are all in a 9 to 5 cycle, and suddenly we are not. Many of us are at home. Many of us are having to figure out how to be at home, whether it's with our spouses, whether it's with our parents, whether it's with our children. And all of these are taking a toll on certain groups, whether we look at women, whether we look at certain minorities, whether we look at people who identify differently on a gender spectrum. And
Right.
so for me, some of these things now need to get grounded when we teach.
Absolutely. That's very, very insightful. Uh, you definitely gave all of us a great food for thought. Um, and I want students to pay attention to one simple thing, which is again and again I'm pointing out, is the multidisciplinary aspect coming in here. We've just talked about a very basic social issue when we're addressing something called as design. So you understand how we're playing a role in connecting all of these fields together. Dr. Aditya, over to you. What are your thoughts on perception about design being evolved in the pandemic?
I'll actually take up from where Professor Malpani left, and your sort of connection is that yes, we need interdisciplinary work environments, and we realize more and more that the world has gone interdisciplinary. So when we are working, when any of us are working, we can't work with the other. Unfortunately enough, our education system has not become interdisciplinary in that
Right.
sense. So which is a very which is I identify it as a grave area of concern in India, particularly because all over the world there are various kinds of interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary kind of approaches which have been brought into academia, whereas we kind of still tend to stick towards that whole idea of kind of disciplinary pursuing education in a very, very rigid disciplinary manner. This, I think, has been challenged massively by the pandemic. And this is where we now are understanding, as Professor Malpani pointed out, that this gendered spaces in the house, I mean, of course, people have not changed. I mean, they've not suddenly become more abusive than they were earlier. But now the incidents of abuse have gone up. Now, how do we tackle that? How do we see that? How do we analyze that? Whether social spaces also, the same thing has been happening. How do we develop social spaces, community spaces, so to offer that space of negotiation? And believe me, there are various, I mean, I can recount stories from my life, my experiences at various parts of the world, also in India. The way we need to challenge our thinking, and the way we need to really understand how things have evolved over the years. For example, I had done a project. I just give you one little example. I had done a project on women carrying water in Rajasthan, right? Women have to really work long distances to carry water back. Now, then there was this program that designed, and I'm using this word, they designed a well, and a well that would be operated through this pump motor. So you really don't have to pull the water up either. So right inside the village, they installed the well and the motor, and it could be run on electricity. The women were livid. The women were absolutely upset. Women thought it was a very bad idea. This design has actually spoiled their lives. Why? They thought that their social time, the time with their peers, the women, folk, they would go along with that. They would be away from the patriarchal setup, or the men at home or men in the area. They would have a little time for themselves, walking up and gossiping, chatting, discussing domestic problems, finding solutions, and so on. That was taken away. So, and now they were actually in, that design actually changed their life in a very negative manner. So they said that, why did they not think before even installing this? Because it has ruined us. It has actually ruined our lives. Now we are always at the beck and call of the men who will demand all sorts of things. So which is where, this is where, you really need, I mean, of course, that was designed by, let's say, hydrogeologists, somebody with understanding of water tables and water management, hydrologists, and so on. Somebody must have installed the pumps, understanding that, but they did not look at the social fabric and the factors that actually would, be very, very important if we are talking about lives of women. So in a way, trying to help the woman, they actually harm the woman. So this is why and how, things of design play a very important, at many times, almost like a life-changing kind of impact on communities and on societies. Now, similarly in COVID times, as we could see that, our work, the way we work, the way we went out, the way we talked, the way we went into restaurants, the way we negotiated across social spaces have entirely changed, dramatically changed. So how do we reinvent that? Again, I mean, something like multi-utility spaces for us, it was always the case until and unless we got into a Western thinking of segregating spaces according to its specific use. So even within household, if you go to any, let's say, I mean, I'm not saying that in its ideal, but let's look at Dharavi. Every household, the spaces are multi-utility space. A kitchen becomes a study room becomes a sleeping room, a sleeping room becomes a dining room. So the same space evolves through a 24-hour cycle. So what are we talking about? We need to learn from this. And now we realize, and the example of the table that Professor Malpani was sharing with us is exactly the same thing that we are learning. They were doing it for ages. We hated it. Now we are doing it ourselves at home. So I think these are ways of critically thinking about how we are, hindered by or impeded by design, or facilitated by or benefited by design.
That's brilliant. I absolutely admire the way that you've explained it, both the downside and the upside that we have seen through the pandemic. And there's this one takeaway, if students can understand and actually listen, is that it has always existed. It has always been here. But the way how we operate it now and how we were operating it before has just changed. So there are so many aspects that we are doing on a day-to-day basis, so many products I think that we're using on a day-to-day basis, but we don't realize that, oh, this is a part of what we're talking about, careers, right? Something that is very, very relevant. And okay, Ms. Noopur, over to you.
So I absolutely resonate with Professor Czaee and Dr. Aditya, and most of my thoughts are around the same thing. But while it's important to see how problem solving in these critical times is very important, and looking at the micro environments, the micro and the macro environments at large, also a lot of people are just somehow figuring out ways to navigate, and in a very generic way, things like upskilling, collaboration, all these things have become very, very important. And content, the way it's delivered, is now completely changed to how it was very linearly delivered to your target audiences. Now we're following a more transmedia approach. So that is that's something which has come out, big in the COVID times. And like somebody said, technology is not enough. It's always married with liberal arts, design, psychology. That is going to be actually telling us what our future is. So that's something that I would like to say.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, definitely. The one thing that I think over this pandemic we have realized as coaches and also as students is that um, it cannot be looked at in isolation. And even if you look at the curriculum of what a design course also looks like, there are so many elements that we talk about. We do read about psychology there. We do talk about economics there. We are studying more about sociology and understanding of humans, right? Our needs, which is something as basic as it is taught in any, I think, any and every undergraduate course. But why is it there? You need to come up with that right question to understand, okay, why am I being even taught this? What will I even be getting out of this particular aspect? And I think all of the questions that I was also reading on the side while you guys were explaining were aspects related to, there's one very new term that we've also come across as courses, which is design thinking, right? And it has just become one of the most burning or hot selling courses. I would want to understand from all three of you what design thinking is basically, and how is it that students can actually go ahead and learn more about it. I would want to understand from, okay, Professor Czaee, let's start from you.
I think Ms. Tiwari, in a way, had actually already prefaced that by saying it's a systems thinking now, right?
Right.
Design thinking is not in the traditional sense about creativity. Again, I mean, not creativity understood in that narrow sense of, oh, how well can you represent a thing? As much as can you understand a thing? Can you understand the various factors at play? Can you understand that when we think of let's take a simple thing as an app, right? Lots of people are now designing apps. But when we are thinking of apps, are we going to think of the person who's at the other end of the app as merely a user? Or are we going to take into account that there are people with vastly different personalities, vastly different inclinations, not to even start to talk about things like caste, class, gender, race, all of those, right? So until we take into account that all of us are part of a much larger network, right? We have to think of this in terms of actors, networks, objects, and sort of tie it in along those lines to be able to somewhere unpack this term design thinking. I mean, at least that's how I read into it. Right?
Right.
I'm not coming at it, and it's certainly become rather popular. Ironically, not inside a design school, but inside a management school.
Exactly.
The brilliance of it. But then, if management school's telling you that, right? Then how do you marry management with, let's say, design, interior design in my case, right? I mean, at JSA, I would tell somebody, please go do a minor. And we mercifully have that opportunity where you have a major field of study and you have a minor. And then you start figuring it out from between those two. Okay, what's happening in different places? Again, I come back to the question of interdisciplinarity once again.
Exactly. Right. Dr. Aditya, do you want to add something to this?
Just one particular instance which I think is very important here, that when we are doing the so-called design thinking, as you rightly pointed out, and as Professor Noopur also talked about, that systems thinking, systems approach. Now, apart from that, there's a misconception among many students, and I see some of the questions here also, that you need to be hugely creative. You need to be hugely talented in drawing, and with your skills with pens and papers and brushes maybe. I actually need to really intervene here, is that it is not only about creating your own design, it is also about identifying designs that exist in the world. Now, if you look at our natural world, let's say if you look at environment, for example, if you look at the ecology, for example, if you look at biodiversity, for example, there's a design, and that we did not create that design probably. So that exists, but some of the design that already exists are working wonders for us, for our causes and so on. So instead of disturbing that design, to preserve that design is also a challenge. So let's say we are looking at something like our water systems. Now, a water system, right from procuring water, treating it, delivering it, and so on and so forth, and many other usages of water, there is a system, a natural system, is that, let's say, through glaciers, through seas, through rivers, that connects under, let's say, the underground water and so on. So we need to be, in a sense, we also need to understand that we need to be minimalist at certain points. We don't need to interfere with natural designs in such a way that it actually ruptures, it actually breaks apart. So it is, I mean, apart from creating our own designs or being creative with the designs that we will eventually probably need to or want to do, we also need to understand that the existing designs in various spheres of our world, and identifying them and understanding how our design that we are going to create and the ones which already exist, how seamlessly they could actually merge with each other. That is when we talk about sustainability all these days, these days a lot, and that's one of my areas of specialization also. But when we are looking at the natural design as opposed to the design that we are going to create or we will create, and but then the most important part is that seamless integration of these two designs, because otherwise if we, as opposed to that idea, we actually destroy the existing design and create new designs which are highly unsustainable in most cases, which is what we have been doing all this while. So identify the existing designs, and that is where your interdisciplinary training comes very, very handy, because you understand uh, right from sociology or anthropology or ecological studies or environmental studies or engineering, how to sort of to just to identify and recognize these existing designs becomes a huge task. And that is where we also struggle, because we don't really need to or want to change everything. We need to change only certain things in certain places, which actually, it's like the jigsaw puzzle where it fits in nicely, and then you get the whole picture.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's very well pointed out. It's not always going to be about creating something new or coming up with a new design. It is also about understanding, about preserving it, right? And also coming up with something that is already in place and seeing a very different way of thinking it, or looking at it, which can solve new problems, or which can actually help you take up different scenarios into picture. And that's very rightly said, that because students come from this one focus. Okay, I'm creative, I'm good at drawing, so I can do design, right? But we're not even recognizing, okay, what kind of designs do you like, how many different types of designs have you actually seen, or where do you see where you're sitting in a room, tell me the different types of design that you can see right in front of you. Like, even in front of me right now, we can come up with 5, 7, 8, 10 types of design that we can see here right on our screens, right? So how is it that you see and understand these particular things? That also needs to be there. So what we're talking about here, students, is perceptual aptitude, right? um Ms. Nupur, anything you would want to add on to this?
So currently, the whole concept of design thinking has evolved, and it's all about rethinking design thinking.
Right.
So initially, design thinking was only about problem solving. But the core of design thinking, I think every designer would agree to that, is empathy. So if empathy is missing, then you cannot have design thinking done the right way. So empathy, connection, alignment to your macro environment, looking at things, in a holistic way is very, very important for design thinking. And like I told you about the systems design, and those kind of things are very, very important and critical now. So design thinking has sort of, it's the same thing, but it's evolved much more. People are more aware of what they're doing, why they are designing. The whys are being asked more, than they used to be. So it's not just about the form and the facade and the aesthetics of it. Why are we doing those things? Why are we actually redesigning this? Or it's all about sustainability by the end of the day. So if it's sustainable, if it's good for the macro environment, if it's aligned to what your ideology is, then I think that's the way to go.
Right. So thank you so much. All right, I have to come to a few questions that students are also looking at. Now, we would want to understand that this is coming more from the student's perspective, that somebody, let's say, who has absolutely no idea about design, okay, and the specializations that design has to offer. How, as a student, would you suggest that I should take up a few steps, or what should be those steps to understand the field of design, and what can be some of the areas that I can come up with? Is there any activity that you have in mind, any kind of skill sets that you would want to recommend, any courses, anything? Professor Czaee, let's start with you.
Can I be absolutely honest?
Yeah, please.
And therefore, my absolutely honest answer is you really don't require any skill set for design except for curiosity. If you're somebody who's interested in the world around you, right, you will then be interested in how things happen, how things operate, how things are made, how things are put together, how things break apart, how things fail. Right? This is, I would imagine this is just the purview of somebody who's curious. If you're somebody who's curious, who's looking for answers, and especially if you're somebody who's been told to keep their hand down in class, you're definitely a design student. Right? Because curiosity is what will lead you through whichever field of design you take up. Apart from that, apart from the very fact that they are interconnected, but that's what's going to see you through. It's not going to be, I'm honestly going to say at this point, it's really not going to be whether you already know about design. Because if you already knew about design, why are we there to provide an undergraduate education?
Right.
That's our job. Come in just because you're interested in knowing how things work. Right? Based on how things work, you might talk to a few people and say, okay, am I interested in that at the level of a building? Am I interested at the level of how people live? Am I interested at the level of a piece of furniture?
Right.
Those are then distinctions you can make. But ideally, those are also things you should be able to realize as you're progressing through your design education. And therefore, your design education itself has to be flexible. Right? That's something that we've actually really foregrounded at JSA, that you should have control over your curriculum. So while we're saying, yeah, okay, here are some, mandated seminars you have to take. Here are some mandated practice-based studios that you have to take. How you take them, what you do through them, how we navigate that space is all designed, to help you understand who you are. We don't want you to become just another jack in the box. We don't want identical eggs here. Right? I think while we all learn that along the way, we're just saying, let's learn it right from day one. Right? So while we might have certain things that are common, like a foundation, or everybody does a capstone or a thesis.
Right.
When you choose to do what is up to you. Alongside a design major, if you want to do journalism, you should take that up as a minor, because you might be a designer who's interested in writing. As again, sorry, Miss Tiwari, I keep coming back to you. She's testament to the fact, right? She's a designer who's working in film and set design. That is a huge field for designers, and especially interior designers. Half of your interior designers worth their salt today are working on visual media in the form of VFX and all of those, UI, UX, many forms of virtual engagement. Those are also our lives. We are very much living through Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Right? Those are also design spaces. Absolutely. So we really got to come down to basically saying that start off with just being curious. And from there, find an education program that allows you to be curious, that allows you to ask questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And just to kind of address a few questions here from the audience before we move forward. For everybody who's asking that you're from commerce, I'm from humanities, I am from sciences, what should I do, what I need to do? You can be from any stream to take up a design course. You need not be having a specific design related subject in order to pursue a design course. You can be from any stream. It is completely stream agnostic. You do keep in mind that yes, there are entrance exams. Yes, there are going to be creative aptitude tests or a design aptitude test depending upon the universities. And also probably somewhere around of group discussion and interviews to understand, as Professor Czaee said, your level of curiosity, the way you look at design and how you look at design. These are some important elements to look at. So I hope that is cleared here. With respect to also catering to the question that, you have all the universities, and Soumya and Anita are also answering with you with all of this here. We have one question. We talk a lot about portfolios when we talk about design courses, right? That students need to come up with portfolios and they need to showcase in a hard copy format or a soft copy format and things like that, right? Now we also have digital drawing into the picture. We are looking at it in a major way and students are learning that. So do you think that maintaining a portfolio in a physical format or more like a digital format is okay? Or if both of them are okay. Dr. Aditya, over to you.
Before I get to the question, I just wanted to reiterate what Professor Malpani said, that you really don't need any other skill than curiosity, and it's inherent in you. Now, in the question of portfolio, it's always good to have one, but portfolios again can be of different kinds. So portfolios, I mean, apart from the digital or physical one, it's just a matter of forms, or a question of form. However, the content of that portfolio, whether it is drawings that you do or whether it is articles that you write, both actually could be part of your portfolio. The books that you have read, a critique of those that you have read, could also comprise your portfolio. So essentially what I am trying to get at is, since the idea of design has expanded so much, if you have the basic curiosity and if you get into a design course, then definitely you will find something that interests you or that you are really keen on. You will find your niche. So that is exactly where and how, and your portfolio should actually reflect your interest. You really don't need to be forcing something into it just because it is something that you've been told by so many people that I need to have these nice drawings, I need to have these nice architectural sketches and so on. No, you can have anything in your portfolio and still it works because it's your life, it's your interest, your passion and your hobby.
Right.
So we would definitely never suggest that you can only develop one kind of portfolio. You can develop many kind of portfolio if you're good with, let's say, making things instead of really drawing or something like that. If you're interested in cooking, why not? So all that can be part of your portfolio. This is your profile. If you, let's say, if you love writing, if you love reading, so there will be each of these things are very, very important when it comes to design thinking. And when you expand, I mean, just as uh, Professor Noopur said, that see, the communication design. So how would you have a portfolio where you draw? I mean, if you are fantastic at drawing, you can be a cartoonist probably. But if you looking at something like communication design, of course you will not need a drawing your drawing skills. Something that I coordinate is an undergraduate course in community design. In community design, you don't need any skills in drawing at all. You just need to be socially a little aware, know what things and how things are working out, and have that sense in your mind. That's it. You really don't need to have a portfolio in that case. So, and something like community design is very, very unique, I would say, because it actually takes the core principles of design and it applies in a social setting.
Right.
So something of these, and what kind of drawing skills would you look at for that?
Right.
None, actually none. So I think what we need to really understand is we are expanding the ideas, we are expanding the whole gamut of things that can be done or can be performed. That's where I think we all three of us agree in a sense, and that's what we want to impress upon the students also here.
Absolutely. And I think that actually brings me to a very concrete question. And I would want, and I'm seeking answers as a student, because, they're very, very curious to understand as to how do we actually explore our interest in designing careers. Okay. So are there any kind of activities or certification programs or anything that you would want to recommend for a student to explore their interest in design careers? Ms. Noopur, let's start from you.
Um, Activities, there are millions of activities, starting from, I mean, how do you start being curious about things, about the world around you, starting from sketching to developing basic observational skills, to developing a high level of like emotional intelligence, sensitivity, critical approach to analyze and interpret the visual metaphors and the visuals around you. It's very important to develop these kind of skills more than just the soft skills or the design tools that we all learn. So it's very easy to say you should do this course and this course will give you this kind of output. But I would say that these are some of the skills that if a student has an aptitude, then they can cultivate these things by doing various activities. One of the things is sketching. Sketching, helps you with observation, with, hand-eye coordination, all those things. So that's the basics. Then also you can, somewhere you need to have the research skills as well, because designing is also about research. Right. So developing that in some sense. So they could be done through courses or by taking up independent projects, by building that kind of skill set within you. So those are the things that I would recommend the students to do. Some of the activities that right now you see so many activities which are published online. You have there's no dearth of information anywhere. It's right. What you really make out of it and how you can actually interpret all that information. So that you can do only if you have the sensitivity, if you have the high, level of emotional intelligence, and then you'll be able to comprehend that.
Right. Thank you so much. And I think I would also want students to understand here is that you have a lot of platforms that are available to you, right? From Coursera, Skillshare to Harvard Open Courses, Stanford Open Courses, or Udemy, or any of the courses that you would want to pick up and understand your, your interest in design and explore your interest in design. Please take up a course and please see, and as something as simple as sketching, all of these things can be taken up. And once you start taking them up, please make sure that you stick with them at least for 3 to 6 months and see what are the different kind of skill sets that you can, use here. So that is one area.
Anchita, I forgot to mention storytelling skills are very important.
So
yes, so in case you can find somebody who teaches you storytelling skills, or you can develop them yourself, then you can go ahead and do that. It's very, very important in today's world.
Thank you so much. That's a very relevant point that you've pointed out. Also, I would want to quickly understand before I would leave this open for you. So with the universities, obviously, what is it that your universities are doing to ensure students that, they're coping up with the changing trends? Professor Czaee.
Okay, I wanted to respond to your previous question in terms of what can students do to prep, and then I'll follow us into the one you just asked. Well, apart from everything Ms. Tiwari suggested, I think one of the things we, thank God for the internet and everybody having to up their game. And when I say everybody, I mean universities, right? A lot of information is available, and a lot of universities are now offering variety of workshops. Most of these are not, you don't have to pay for it. Right? You can attend, you can listen, you can participate. Universities will often reach out to schools as well. I know we certainly do, and especially, part of the art and architecture team. We often work with schools to offer workshops as well. Right? And this is a great way to just test both what you perceive design to be, and also whether it's something that you can actually enjoy. This process that we are following, what it might entail. So sort of creating your web presence, actively looking up universities, things that you're interested in. Most people, again, are more than willing and very happy to talk to students, right? I mean, for example, one workshop I'd held on gender and images, some students from a school reached out to me, and we just hung out together for an hour after that, 2 weeks after, to talk about issues and talk about whether design may or may not be something they're interested in. Through a regular discussion. It's not like a very didactic discussion. So I think that little shift on both ends makes a huge amount of difference, right? And then coming to how are we changing the structure of pedagogy while we are online? I can again say we hate being online. It's not what designers like when they're teaching. That said, over the last year and a half, we've actually taken a couple of stances. So, we realized that there are certain things that an online format is closer to and other things that it's not. Working in person, it's not close to that, especially when you're learning certain kinds of skills. However, maybe in terms of at least seminar-based content, because the distance between, let's say, a physical book and a digital book has gotten just a little narrower. Right? Reading on our computers is something we're a little bit more aware of. So over the last year, we actually took a very conscious decision to put all our seminars together. And again, because our students can take seminars, they don't have to be like, I'm in the second year, I can only take second year classes. A second year student at JSA studies with a fourth year, a fifth year, first year. Well, not the first year actually, because they have a separate cohort and they're all settling in a foundation year. But anywhere from second to fifth year, because we also have architecture school there, right? So there was that studying together there, which lays an emphasis on peer learning, making sure that you are actually learning across both vertically and horizontally, working more with seminars. Now, since we're looking at this last, hopefully the last semester being online, we are again bringing more practice oriented work back into it, what we call ateliers or studios, right? Ateliers are basically supposed to be like offices. So we're bringing that back, but now we're trying to attune it to what can be done, understanding that we are in a work from home situation. Right? For example, this part of a course that I teach, which is called the Representation Lab. Alongside, there's another course called the Structures and Building Materials. This is actually going to run as an integrated studio for us. But what are we looking at? We're looking at a book, right? We've said that our site of study, what architects and designers imagine as a physical site, a site can be anywhere. A book is a site. You can build upon it, you can build in it, you can build through it, you can reverse engineer it, you can learn about making and materials through it. You can unpack everything there, right? So that's how we're adapting to being in an online mode. But again, can't wait to be back offline. Really can't.
Totally. And I think Mr. Pur, there are a lot of follow-up questions on what was the basic reason why you said storytelling is very, very important. I would want you quickly to, just take 1 minute and address this, that our students would want to understand how is storytelling important in the field of design and why would that be important?
I think everything revolves around storytelling. So everything has a conflict, everything has an action, everything has a resolution, right? And there are different kinds of narratives that you're looking at, whether it's a linear or a circular narrative, just to name a few. And looking at the whole idea of transmedia storytelling, which is the current approach to delivering content, whether it's any kind of content that you see, that's the approach that everybody needs to follow, because the linear way of creating content is now obsolete, because you see so much content online all the time that everything stays buoyant. So if you want it to actually go and percolate inside the viewer's head, you have to give them a transmedia story. And to understand transmedia stories, you have to know the basics of storytelling. If you're a great storyteller, then you will somewhere find a path to communicate to your audiences more clearly. So I think that is important.
Perfect. Thank you so much. What ma'am's trying to basically say here, students, is that how you would communicate and make it more comprehensible to the general public as to what that design is and how is it that they're solving the purpose is something that you will have to keep in mind here. Dr. Aditya, one question for you, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing a little time here, so I'm taking up different questions. If someone's interested in something like integrating design and, let's say, management together or business together, what kind of careers come to your mind, or any specializations that you can talk about?
Many, in fact. As I said, the whole idea of design has expanded. And if you're looking at something like management, for example, now resource management, urban management need, all these kind of approach careers. In fact, those are open nowadays, will need a lot of design thinking. So essentially, designers are managers at one level, which we need to understand, and managers are designers at the other level. So we are not looking at management or design separately, and that's the beauty of interdisciplinary approach, and something that Professor Noopur also kept highlighting, that, see, it's about empathy, it's about emotional intelligence, it's about storytelling, it's about getting the things together. So a manager is as much of a designer as a designer is as much of a manager. So essentially, various kinds of careers are now opening up. For example, what kind of qualification would you need to work in the United Nations, for example? Let's think about it. What kind of UNDP, WWF, or a place like DFID, or CSR, for example? What kind of skills would you need? For example, this entire CSR industry, you need various kinds of design skills. At the same time, you need various kinds of management skills. So you actually we are actually looking at universe which is converging, which is not really, diverging, but which is converging, but converging
Right.
from a point, taking up all these different elements and converging at one point, which is eventually your career. Now, when you are converging that, if you just visualize it as a conical flow, that you have these various elements on top, and it actually crystallizes at the bottom, and that is when what you work with, or eventually that what is your career in. uh, that's what it happens. And that at that point, would you be able to separate out design, separate out management, separate out this and that? I mean, I know for a fact that there are courses in financial management, for example,
Right.
rural management, urban aspects of urban design. So
Right.
planning, particularly public policies and planning.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there are a vast array of areas which demand professionals, which requires today, which there's a huge demand for professionals, but we don't have them at hand. How many would you think are or will be able to work in a space of public policy without knowing design, or without knowing management, or without knowing both, and where do they intersect? I mean, they're actually intersecting all the time. So I
Right.
think we should, I mean, and this is something which we also emphasize at JSAA, is
Hmm.
that, I mean, to most of our students, in fact, unlearn. When you join any university, the university's role, to be
Right.
honest, I mean, tracing it back to like
Hmm.
1,000 years of history of universities, unlearn. You really have to unlearn, and then look at things differently, and then start the process again. So, and which, I mean, by the way, and I'm not talking out of the hat, we've all done that. I mean, I am 100% sure that Professor Noopur will agree with that. Professor Malpani will agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with it, that we've all unlearned various things at various points, and then looked at things differently. So that's how
Hmm.
broad the field really is. I mean,
Right.
right from development sector, communities, urban planning, public policy, financial management, microcredits, a huge area for people to work in financial management and community design is microcredit. And
Right.
the area of microcredit has expanded dramatically over the years. So
Hmm.
yes, that's, I think I overshot a little bit, but yes, that's, I think this is what we are looking at really.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That makes complete sense. Ms. Nupur, quickly understanding from you, what are the kind of admission processes that you follow at your college? And is there any change with the existing process? What are the things students need to keep in mind?
So we're having a selection for Jagran School of Visual Arts and Design, which is offering courses in BDes and MDes in visual communications and user experience design, which is a very new field which has come up, and also BVA and MVA in visual in filmmaking, animation, and VFX. So we have those courses which are going on, and the selection is on the basis of an entrance exam and interview. It's called JLUET, which is the interview, the exam. And scholarships are also given to students. They're based on the JLUET. From 25% to say 100% of scholarships are provided on entrance course. And if any of you are interested, we have the next round coming up on 14th of August.
Oh, great. So
And yeah,
students
we
can
do
take it.
have we have the entrance exam followed by an interview wherein we also look at the portfolio of the student and
Okay.
all those things. So
So is portfolio mandatory, Ms. Nupur? Can you just clarify?
it is mandatory on mostly it is mandatory, but in case there are some special circumstances where the student hasn't made the portfolio but they want to show it during the interview, then
Mhm.
you don't have to submit it prior, but you can always bring it to your interview as well. So that is also one of the flexibility we've given
Right.
looking at the COVID times. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Professor Czaee has already talked about how Jindal offers a major and minor program at Jindal School. And there have been constantly posting links also, so you can go ahead and check there as well. One last question before we wrap up, and this is for all of you. How, for example, let's say a student is very talented and is very keen on pursuing design. Okay. And I know I've put this question before, but we don't exactly know what specialization to take up. whether my heart lies in interior, or would I be comfortable picking up fashion design or jewelry design or accessory design. What are some things or some parameters that you would like to share to come to a particular decision, or are there any steps that you would recommend students to follow? Professor Zai.
Anshita, do you mean before they've joined a university or after? Because if it's after, we allow that flexibility that, after you're done with your first year, which is foundation, you still get to, negotiate and re-choose. Well, you may have come in thinking interiors and you may think that, based on everything I've heard the first year, I feel like I am somebody who'd like to engage with community or urban studies more. So we
Right.
allow for that to happen. Now, like we discussed, if this is prior to joining a university, when you're trying to make a selection, I think the best thing you could do is sort of make for yourself a little bit of a list of what are the universities you like to apply to, and talk to faculty members, talk to students. Students are a great source of not just behind the scenes information, but also how they feel being at a particular place. Do they think students are a great measure and a marker of, are we being successful in what we're trying to teach? Right? And that doesn't mean that that everybody, again, like I said, it's not a one size fits all. When we think of somebody coming into design, we think that somebody who wants to write about design is on an equally valid career path as somebody who wants to just build things, right? Somebody who say that I want to have a business where I'm into construction. That's all I want to do. I enjoy thinking design, but I want to construct. Equally valid. Somebody wants to go and work as a hospitality manager. Equally valid. So we are not telling you here's exactly what you should be. We are saying like take these 4 years, have an idea in mind. If you're not sure what you want to do over the 4 years, definitely reach out to students and faculty at any institute. Right? Faculty, of course, has one narrative. Students have another narrative to provide, and you will get a very balanced opinion. And most places, I know we certainly are, I'm sure Jagran is as well. We are all very accessible over our school Instagram handles, our Facebook, our Twitter, email, all the time, all of those things.
Right.
So that's an excellent way to decide whether something is interesting. Looking at coursework, what are you actually going to study? I know, for example, when I was selecting what I'd want to do for a master's, I knew I wanted to do a master's of architecture, right? But if I was looking at, I didn't apply to Harvard or the Graduate School of Design, because when I saw their coursework, I was like, this is painfully dull. Right? It's very rigid and it's painfully dull. I'm sorry for people who've been to Harvard, at Harvard, all of that. But it wasn't for me. I knew what I wanted to do with the coursework. I knew I wanted electives. I knew there were certain things I wanted to study. Right? So look at coursework, talk to the instructors, talk to students. That's what I would say.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. Aditya, any new inputs you would want to add to what Dr. Professor Zai said?
I guess, yeah, I mean, it kind of sums up mostly because, as I said, take these 4 years, use your passion, mix your passion with what you want to do, see what interests you. Maybe after 2 years within this institution, any university, you might change. People change all the time. You should have, I mean, you should not curse yourself for changing from starting at one point and getting at the other. And that's the beauty of education. You should, and believe me, for all of us, I strongly believe that teachers' duty is to make themselves redundant over the years. So
Right.
you will be thinking for yourself. And if at any point you think that, well, I wanted to do this, but not anymore, I wanted to do this.
Right.
Design courses are something which gives you that flexibility and gives you that bouquet of opportunities to try out different things. So be open, don't be closed, and take these 4 years of your undergrad just to kind of churn yourself in whichever way, unlearn, learn, negotiate, argue, fight, do all kinds of things, and then come up with what at the end of 4 years is I'm sure you will have a very clear idea of what you want to do and which direction you want to take. If not, then again, as Professor Malpani said, that we are all there. Students are there, your peers, everybody is there, so you can discuss, you can find out which way you want to pursue.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Ms. Noopur, anything from your side? Anything you
So
want to add?
So great advice, Dr. Aditya and Professor Czaee. Mostly what I would like to say is what they said. But then there's also one more advice that, people need to be flexible in their first year. So if a student, we have lots of students who will come in and say, this is what we want to do. And then they'll see the kind of stuff which is happening in the school and the kind of curriculum we have, the kind of state-of-the-art studios we'll have. So that is why everything is put under the faculty of creative studies and journalism. So, if a student comes in, they have the flexibility to see around, and then, somewhere they understand where their niche is. But I would like to say that whenever you're joining a course, don't be very, very rigid. Be flexible in your approach and always be in flow state. You can learn, you can unlearn, you can do those things. So that's
Right.
very, very important for the students.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for highlighting these points. And for everybody who's we've kind of missed out any questions, please feel to write to us at hello@mindler.com. And if all of you are comfortable, if you want to put in your email IDs or your LinkedIn handles or anything, then you can please go ahead and put that in the chat box for our students to reach out. Um, our students would also get help from that as well. So that's there. And I know that it is very difficult to decide and understand how to explore your interest. It's very difficult to come up with new courses and stick with it and see whether or not you're doing well in it. It's also extremely critical to understand what parameters to keep in mind while selecting a particular college and how to start preparing and when to start preparing for it. We at Mindler definitely handhold you for each and everything that you have your concerns right in the very first place. So don't feel any nervousness, any anxiety that my questions are very silly or they're going to sound very stupid. There is nothing like that at all. It's completely okay. And it's great if you have questions in your mind. And it's great, as Professor Czaee has already mentioned, the curiosity, let that grow. If you have that fire in your belly, nothing else is going to be more important. So definitely reach out to us and look up our programs as well. We are here to help you out, decide your streams, decide your careers, help you shortlist your colleges and courses. So feel free to reach out to us. And as well, all of the panelists have put on their email IDs and their numbers. Please feel to reach out to them. Thank you so much, everybody. It was great hosting you and having you on board. I have learned quite a bit and I'm more curious now. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks so much for having us. Thank you. And it's been nice to meet you, Ms. Tiwari. It was, albeit virtually, but thank you, Anchita, for putting all of us together on a panel. This has actually been really fun. And if you ever consider design education, please do get in touch. I think you'd make for a fantastic designer as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you so much, Anchita. It was a wonderful session. And thanks so much for connecting designers across India. It's been a pleasure meeting all of you virtually. So thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anchita.
Thank you, Dr. Aditya. Thank you, Dr. Professor Czaee. Thank you, Mr. Pur. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our students. Feel free to reach out to us should there be anything. And we'll be coming up with new webinars. So stay tuned for that as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.